Tina, tell us how you felt at the exact moment you realized you had won. Well, Rona, I can only say that I've thought about this day. Dreamed about this day for as long as I can remember.
Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional.
This literally is precept number 1 of the Buddhist doctrine, which is life and suffering.
And it's born out of our propensity to become attached to ideas, particularly narratives and stories around who we are and what our value is. Who we are and what our value is. What our value is. In a way, I find it very liberating, right? Because it basically says that no matter what path you take, there's struggle in front of you. So the logical conclusion is you should
always take the right path.
Being unhealthy is painful. Being healthy is painful.
Having no relationships
is painful. Having relationships is painful. Being lazy is painful. Working really hard is painful. It's just different flavors of pain. So you might as well pick the flavors of pain that are going to help you and give you a better set of life circumstances.
You've talked a lot about, too, and you've already touched on a little bit about kind of the evolution, our evolutionary history of this. Humans are just wired to be dissatisfied, right? It was Dostoevsky who said, if man ever finds utopia, first thing he's going to do is complain.
And that's just wired into our DNA. It's like you said,
this negativity biased survival thing. What was it? Louis C.K. Everything's awesome, nobody's happy. It's part of our nature. That is not going away. So like you're saying, you may as well choose that pain. You may as well choose whatever discomfort rather than just let it happen to you.
I think there's a really important distinction here as well between pain and suffering. Again, the Buddha has a really great allegory about this. He said that whenever you suffer, it's like getting struck by 2 arrows. The first arrow is the actual thing that hurts. The second arrow is the meaning that we create around the first arrow. Our skin gets pierced by an arrow and we start saying, well, why did I deserve to get hit? Why am I the one that's hurt? Why didn't he get struck by an arrow? He's an asshole. I'm a good person. Why does this always happen to me? Why? And then it's those narratives that we create around the pain that linger for years, right? It's like if you physically get cut, that's going to heal in a few days or a week or 2. But the narratives you create around that cut, they can stay with you for your entire life. And so the first part is the pain, and pain always goes away. It's always temporary. But the suffering, depending on how much we buy into the narratives around our pain, we can continue to suffer for decades. Being unhealthy is painful. Being healthy is painful.
having no relationships
is painful. Having relationships is painful. Being lazy is painful. Working really hard is painful. It's just different flavors of pain. It's just different flavors of pain. In a way, I find it very liberating, right? Because it basically says that no matter what path you take, there's struggle in front of you. So the logical conclusion is you should always take the right path.
Demons, be gone!
Be gone, demons.
Be gone!
Leave this studio!
You can have a relationship that's a dumpster fire, but if both people in it recognize that there's a dumpster fire and they've got buckets and they're ready to go fetch water, you can make it work. It might be hard, it might take years, you can make it work. It might be hard, it might take years. You can make it work. If you've only got one person with a bucket and the other one is like pouring gasoline, you're done. So get your hot sauce ready because this one's gonna get a little bit spicy and dramatic. Maybe even have your partner join in for it. It could be fun, or it could ruin your marriage. Should I stay or should I go? See, here at Mark Manson Industries, we receive hundreds, if not thousands, of questions each month. We decided to take buckets of these questions and turn them into themes for our podcast episode. And while we're going through this, I'm going to focus in on 3 fundamental questions that I think every couple needs to ask themselves when they're going through hard times. The answer to these 3 questions will help you determine whether the relationship is salvageable or whether it's a total fucking dumpster fire. It's funny, whenever you see like really toxic relationships, there's a very repeatable dynamic that happens over and over. There's always one person who, no matter what happens, it's not their fault, it's your fault. And then there's one person who, no matter what happens, it's not your fault, it's my fault. And these people tend to find each other and stick together for quite a while. And so there's just kind of this unidirectional blame. Nothing actually ever gets better because to improve a relationship, you actually need 2 people fundamentally working on themselves and working on the relationship simultaneously. And this dovetails perfectly with the first question I think everybody should ask themselves. Are both people equally aware of the problem and equally putting an effort to fix the problem? If the answer is no, then you're fucked. There's not really anything you can do. So now whenever I say this to people, this is where you get the classic like, whoa, but she wasn't always like this, or maybe she'll change, or you know, she's just going through a hard time or whatever. And there's a lot of excuse making that happens. There's a lot of enabling and justifying. And the fact of the matter is, if somebody doesn't want to change, you can't make them change.
And you're crazy to sit around and wait for them to change. And people don't like hearing that.
We all get defensive sometimes, and we all get triggered sometimes, and we all say things that are disrespectful that we kind of regret. What matters is how we react to those situations. We all make mistakes in relationships. We all get emotional, we all get triggered, we all say things that we don't mean or that they don't come out right. We're all occasionally disrespectful when we don't mean to be disrespectful. That's just being human. What matters is how you compensate for that afterwards. Do you admit fault? Do you admit mistake? Do you apologize? Do you forgive? If you're able to do all those things, then fine. Like, the relationship's going to be great. If one of the 2 people cannot do those things, then you're going to constantly run into these problems over and over and over again. And if that person who cannot do these things is not aware that they can't do them, you can't make somebody apologize for things that they don't think are wrong. My take here is get the fuck out, save yourself. Like, you can have a relationship that's a dumpster fire, but if both people in it recognize that there's a dumpster fire and they've got buckets and they're ready to go fetch water, you can make it work. It might be hard, it might take years, you can make it work. Make it work. You can make it work. Make it work. Make it work. You can make it work. Make it work. You can make it work. Make it work. Work, 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 work. You can make it work. You can't make somebody apologize for things that they don't think are wrong. My take here is get the fuck out, save yourself. Like, you can have a relationship that's a dumpster fire, but if both people in it recognize that there's a dumpster fire and they've got buckets and they're ready to go fetch water, you can make it work. It might be hard, it might take years, you can make it work.
Demons, be gone!
Be gone, demons.
Be gone!
Leave this studio!
Please leave a message after the tone.
I believe in you.
Always surprise me every time we hang out, and we never fail to have super interesting conversations. So I'm overjoyed to have you here. Thank you so much for coming on and being my guinea pig, and being my guinea pig, my guinea pig, my guinea pig.
You are currently working on a book at the moment about beliefs and this concept of useful, not true.
I noticed that it was underneath all of my life philosophies, but never explicitly stated, that I don't believe anything I say. I don't believe anything anyone else says. I think that everything I say is questionable. Maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. I think it's right when I say it, but we don't know ourselves that well. We think we remember things in the past perfectly, but we don't. We think we know why we're doing things in life, but we don't really know. And we can talk about some colorful stories around that if you want. But then because I believe the same thing about everybody else, I believe that we live in a mostly social world unless you're a scientist. And so I just operate through life this way, choosing what beliefs serve me best. Meaning, like, there are any particular ways you could look at things. One way just makes you sad and just makes you want to just stay in bed. Another way makes you jump up out of your chair and take action. Well, then I'll choose the way that makes me jump out of my chair. I'll choose the perspective that makes me take action. If it's a useful belief, I'll choose it, because nothing's true anyway. I mean, except for some physical realities, almost nothing in our social world is true, meaning absolutely, necessarily, inarguably, objectively, repeatedly true. So I'm just choosing the beliefs that serve me best. Serve me best.
It's funny, actually, years and years ago, I wrote an article similar to this idea, and so many people challenged me on it that I got kind of sick of defending myself, and I think I eventually just took it out of my archive because I'm like, geez, people, all right.
It seems to me that there's some sort of practical limit to this concept, right? So it's like, if I'm a couch potato and I'm feeling lazy and depressed all the time, if I can manage to convince myself that I'm actually a successful person who's just had a bad string of luck, that's a very useful thing to believe, and that will probably help me get off the couch. So I'm with you there.
When I tell people that I'm writing this book, basically, in short, their question is, but what about psychopaths?
Yes.
What about a politician believing they won the election that they actually lost? It's
right.
Useful, not true, for them to believe that they won? What about people that believe that their enemy on the other side of the fighting line is subhuman and should just all be exterminated like cockroaches? That's useful, but not true. So far, the best thing I can offer is to say that I'm sharing a tool like a driving instructor can teach you to drive a car, but doesn't have to keep addressing everybody. Now remember, kids, don't drive into a crowd of people. Don't use this to murder. It's like, okay, does everybody teaching everything have to say, now remember, don't use this for murder? Don't be evil? But I feel that I should address this early. So far, all I've got is basically a paragraph in the intro before the book begins saying, just to be clear, this is a book about you being the person you want to be. This is not a book about other people and whatever they do. So that's all I got so far.
As children, we create a lot of those narratives and meaning, and they stick with us throughout our lives. And if we have shitty narratives, they hold us back.
Ah, this isn't music! Yeah, when I was a kid, you dressed like a woman and you sung about the devil. Now, that was music. And you had one ballad every album. Started off in black and white, and when the guitar solo came in, it went to color.
Dad wasn't around, baby mom was an alcoholic. We spun up a bunch of narratives as a kid, to cope with that reality. But now we're in our 30s, we're married, we're having our own kids, and we're just a complete fuck up in our intimate relationships. And the thing that's holding us back now are those same narratives that saved us as children.
I think project of therapy in many cases is, first of all, discovering those narratives that we've held on to for far too long. And then secondly, learning to unravel or rewrite them in a more healthy manner. So go to therapy, kids.
Well, you do. This leads us right into the next one then, actually. Everything you believe will one day fail you. This is how you grow.
I love this because this is one of those things that it's so obvious. Like if you're doing science, right? It's just obvious and accepted that you're probably starting out at a place of ignorance or being wrong about something. Yet when it comes to like all these other areas of our life, we don't take that same attitude. If my next door neighbor does something that annoys me and I think he's an asshole, like I never stop and think, well,
you know, I'm probably wrong about that. What is a testable hypothesis
that I can, repeat a few times and collect data on? Like, we never do that. We're like, I know that guy is an asshole. And it's this like certitude that we hold on to that I think, again, these narratives that causes us to suffer so much. And I think it's such an obvious and practical reality that it is impossible to grow without being wrong about something. I think, if I can pull out my soapbox for a second, I think this is something that the self-help industry as a whole does not advertise enough.
That, they say, hey, pay all this money, come to my weekend seminar, you're going to be a completely new person. What they don't tell you is, oh, by the way, to be a completely new person, you have to recognize all of the ways that you're wrong and all of the dumb things that you've been doing, and, oh, you probably need to grieve an old identity or two, because it's not a fun process. The reality of taking a belief or an assumption that you've probably held on to for years, maybe decades, and then recognizing that you were fucking wrong about that, and that you based so much of your life on that incorrectly, like that is not a fun process, but it has to happen. It's very, very, very difficult to actually stop yourself in those moments and be like, wait a second, maybe my neighbor's not an asshole. Maybe I'm being really judgmental. Maybe I'm having a bad day. Maybe I didn't sleep enough last night. Developing those mental habits is a really difficult process.
So we have all these narratives and these stories we tell ourselves, and you talk a lot about this in a lot of different areas, the stories we tell ourselves. And I kind of came up with, I'm super proud that I came up with what's a good story and what's a bad story. But there's bad stories and there's good stories, right? I see like a bad story is something that it protects you, but it fails you in the long term. And so let me give you an example. So let's say you think that you're, whatever it is, not attractive enough, not smart enough, just not good enough in general, right? Mm-hmm. In the short term, that's a protective thing. You probably grew up in a family that criticized you a lot or something like that. And so the smart thing to do in that situation is to withdraw. So you tell yourself, I'm not smart enough, not good enough, whatever. You save face in your social circle. You don't have to put yourself out there and fail and suffer that embarrassment. It's protective. However, in the long run, let's say 5, 10, 20 years down the road, you haven't tried at this point to do anything. Now you're dealing with like deep regret in your life. And so that story that you told yourself, while protective in the short term, has just failed you so catastrophically in the long term. On the other hand, there's good stories we can tell ourselves. And while they still will fail you at some point, because they all do, they actually bring you to a better set of problems or a better set of stories later on. When I was young, I told myself I was smart, was always looking for the external validation of that. A lot of that was because I grew up in a family that didn't have a lot of money, and I was like, this is one way for me to get out of this is through education and being smart. So I told myself I was smart, and that opened up a lot of opportunities for me. It eventually failed me though.
You and I have like very similar stories in that regard. For me, it played out with music.
All right, okay.
I mean, I do love music, but looking back, music was kind of the thing that saved me. It's like, well, if I had a guitar in my hands, people were nice to me and they wanted to hang out with me. So music very much became my identity, and it was my saving grace in a lot of social situations. And so I started to believe that it's like, this is who I am, this is what I'm gonna do. And it's funny, like that, I feel like a lot of young people have that same experience that you had in grad school, that I had in music school, where you suddenly you go from being a big fish in a little pond to a small fish in a big pond. And especially at that age, your ego just gets fucking steamrolled by it. It took about a year for the story to unravel enough for me to actually have the thought of like, maybe I don't want to be a musician. And when I finally did allow myself to have that thought, it felt very catastrophic.
Sexy and exciting results come from doing all the boring things well. All the boring things well.
Yeah, I hate this one. I hate hearing this one. As a very impatient person and somebody who historically always wanted the shiny, sexy thing now and wanted the hack or the trick to get it tomorrow, it took me a long time to learn this one. You know, I think of this one as like the Karate Kid principle. I don't know if you remember the Karate Kid. He goes to Mr. Miyagi. Mr. Miyagi's like this big karate master who's trained all the best fighters in the world. And Mr. Miyagi makes him start painting fences and like washing his car. And it just seems like this old Japanese man getting free slave labor out of a poor teenage kid. But I love that lesson so much because it really does show up in so many areas of life. It's easy to fantasize about the glitzy and exciting stuff, but you don't see the obnoxious tedium that gets you there. You don't see the obnoxious tedium that gets you there. There's a quote that's gone viral recently that I think sums this up well. And I'm probably butchering this, but it's basically like, you receive applause for all the work you put in when no one's looking.
Oh, I love that, yeah.
I personally had to suffer through this in exercise. You know, I think I approached exercise with the same mentality that a lot of people do, which is, it's January 1st, let me Google a workout routine that's gonna make me hot. Okay, this workout routine has all these insane workouts. I need to go like climb trees and do handstands and run 100 sprints a week and only eat celery and peanut butter. And of course, I give up after 2 weeks of trying. What took me a long time to learn and help from a couple reasonable coaches is that it's actually just better to do basic things every day than go kill yourself doing sprints on the beach or like lifting an insane amounts of weight 3 times a week. Like the consistency of just like showing up, doing a short run, lifting a little bit of weight, going for a walk, it adds up over a long period of time. In a way that all like the extreme sexy ways of getting in shape don't. It adds up over a long period of time. In a way that all like the extreme sexy ways of getting in shape don't. And so that was hard to come to terms with. There's no secret workout plan. There's no diet meal that's being handed down upon the heavens that is like, this will finally get you to your 6-pack Elysium. It's like, dude, just show up and fucking lift some weights every day and just don't miss a day. It's really that simple. It's really that simple. That simple.
Sexy and exciting results come from doing all the boring things well. All the boring things well.
Demons be gone.
Be gone, demons.
Be gone.
Leave this studio! Studio! Studio!